Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here. As Jen said, my name is Jeremy Hudgens. I'm the Director of Client Solutions with Genius Monkey. We're an ad tech company that specializes in helping people to get their branding and their messaging in front of an audience, a highly specific audience, in the most efficient way possible, and measuring what works and acting on that data. So we'll talk a little bit more about some of the lessons that we've learned from all of that. We're based out of Phoenix, Arizona. So at this particular time of year, really happy to be here. In the hotel room, or in the hotel elevator, I should say, yesterday I had somebody say, "Oh man, it's hot out there." I was like, give me a break. Well, we're gonna go through a little bit about why 80% of marketers are failing with display and how to fix it fast. So some of the lessons that we've learned and some of the pitfalls that we see that people fall into. So jump right into that. So we're gonna talk a little bit about better understanding your customer's journey and how that knowledge should be applied to your strategy. This is an area where I continue to be surprised on how often people miss at this. I mean, in all truth, it is easy to do when we get too close to the problem. We're also going to talk about how to utilize Google Analytics and other tools to measure the metrics that matter. Google Analytics is a powerful tool that's worth a little bit more than what you pay for it. It's worth a lot more than what you pay for it. But we're going to talk about some of the ways that it can and should be used, some of the areas where people get lost in that data. There's a lot that can be pulled out of it, so it's easy to get lost. And we're going to talk about how to optimize your ad spend to improve your ROI. What I'm really going to try to do here today is, whether you have a lot of experience in this space or you're just kind of getting started with display, whether it be a fully programmatic suite or again, very, very basic, I want to give everybody a little something to take with you, so please bear with me as we try to do that. And I am going to stick around here a little bit afterwards for questions, maybe even have a few minutes at the end. So please, if you got a good question, I look forward to hearing it, so jot it down and we'll come back to it. So where does display advertising fit in? This is something that we often see people kind of struggle with, and the truth is that it really does impact everything. If utilized properly, it can be a major catalyst for any of your campaigns. Especially given the ability to utilize it and leverage it for a full funnel approach. It allows us to be able to find new audiences, establish brand awareness with those audiences, and grow market share pretty easily there. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we do that through leveraging lookalike audiences and lots of other ways that we can engage in those new audiences. And how we're able to stay in front of those audiences to increase customer retention and advocacy and whatnot. So really powerful way if utilized properly here. So let's talk about what is branding in general. We'll go back to the root of the word. And really what we're talking about here is burnishing into the mind of the consumers our brand, right? It goes back to burnishing livestock, right, with our brand, and we're doing the same thing as marketers, but just kind of helping to solidify that in their minds. So this is a significant challenge though today. In the year 2000, the average human attention span was 12 seconds, okay? Go ahead and shout out for me if you would. What do you think that attention span is today? 3, 8. Give me some shout outs in the back. 8. 3, 5, okay. Okay, well, you guys are no fun. You're messing up my thing here. Okay, because what usually happens, and we got a bit of a mix today, I think it's because it's kind of an odd-shaped room, so it's like find seats wherever you find them. What I generally find, and this is anecdotal, this is just my observation, okay, is that usually the people who are up front are saying 2 or 3, and the further back we have the larger numbers, 7, 8, 9, whatever, right? My belief on why that is because you guys up here, you're my people. You're ADD, right? You're up here trying to pay attention. This is how you do it, right? Okay, and then, well, now I do have some of my ADD folks that are in the back. They're on their computers right now trying to catch up. So it is what it is. But here we are. The average human attention span today is 8 seconds, okay? So if you shouted that out, you were right. Now, don't get too excited and too proud as a human race with that, because the average attention span of a goldfish is 9 seconds. So what we're illustrating here, like, it's tough, people, right? Like how do we get the attention of our audiences and maintain that attention? And that's really what we have to try to do. Engaging with those audiences early on in that process, staying in front of them, as we said, is critical to be able to do that. Just some other data here. If you would like some of the references from it, I can give you those. But I think it wasn't that long ago, 2013, a study was done that showed it took over 28 plus brand interactions in order for the consumer to feel comfortable doing business with your brand. A study was done just a year later that showed one auto purchaser's path to purchase required over 600 plus brand interactions, right? So when we're asking the question, how many brand interactions does it take in order for them to feel comfortable? As many as it takes. That's a daunting task. It's a really, really daunting task. So one of the things that I would tell you that you can take away from this as well is if whoever it is that you're working with for your display, at whatever level, if you're not working on a cost per engagement structure, then you're doing yourself a disservice. Okay, if we go back to that funnel that we were talking about, through a cost per engagement structure, you can engage in those audiences early on, right? With the knowledge that unless they actually click on it and engage with the ad, you're not paying for it. We adopted that from our very foundation, from the very beginning, because we felt like if we're living in a digital age where we have all this information and we know if they're engaging or if they're not, then that's how we should be charging, right? That anything else should be relegated to traditional media where there is a lack of data, and we're just far beyond that. So definitely utilize that, leverage that, and regardless of who you're using. So another thing to remember is just because you have the better product or service doesn't mean you're going to win. If we go back to the original tech war, before Apple and Microsoft, before Apple and Google, I guess, or what have you, we had Tesla and Edison, right? And it is widely regarded that Tesla's technology is far superior, but Edison won based upon his marketing and his PR. He went to extreme lengths so far as to actually electrocute a live elephant. Now, obviously, I'm not advocating that you should do that in your marketing campaigns. I think in this day and age, that would be highly frowned upon. But he was definitely committed, that's for sure. So we have to remember that we have to be smarter. We have to be better. So one of the areas where we see that people really fail with all of this and they kind of miss it is not fully engaging with the level of reach and frequency that is required. Healthy campaigns require that consistent exposure to your audience. If we got to get to those 28 or 600 plus brand interactions, we got to do it. We got to be on it. Okay, and oftentimes people just aren't putting the amount of frequency in there that is required. Because, I mean, all of us, if you go throughout your day, the number of ads that you're receiving on your devices or as you're driving down the road or what have you, like we're bombarded all day long. So we need to be a presence there. Spreading that campaign too thin will cause it to flatline. So let's talk about some of those touches. This is actual data that we're pulling from some of the proprietary technology that we've developed for purposes of attribution. I'll go a little bit deeper into that when we talk about different ways to utilize attribution, different techniques, depending upon what you're doing. But this is an automotive example where our data was allowed us to be able to see how many touches it took in order for the consumer to feel comfortable doing business with that brand. So 34% of the time it took less than 5 touches, 51% of the time less than 10, 46% less than, 51% more than 10, 46% more than 25, 28% more than 50 touches, okay? So powerful information to be able to have. This is done on an individualized basis with that attribution technology that allows you to be able to understand how many touches it requires. B2B example, similarly, 65% less than 5, 55% more than 10, 42 more than 25, roughly a third more than 50 touches, okay? Now, it's important also to remember that it's more than just the reach and frequency, it also takes time. That investment for time to go by, continuing to stay in front of them. So I'm gonna give you an example here. Raise your hand if you're are either in or have worked with the automotive industry. Okay, raise them really high for me, please. Okay, it's really important. Now, keep them really high if it has been your experience that these are very patient people when it comes to marketing. Okay, you hesitated to pull your hand down. Did you? No? Okay. No, these people are not patient. One of the beauties that we have with this type of technology, though, is it allows us to be able to create a voice for the consumer. So what we see in this particular case is that the timeline that is required for the automotive consumer to feel comfortable in moving forward with that purchase, I'm going to skip right down to almost 92% more than 7 days, 82% more than 14 days, more than 30 days, 71%, more than 60 days, almost 60%, more than 90 days, 42%. These people are taking their time to be an informed consumer and making their decision. It's really critical to remember that this is the opinion that matters. And if you've done work with automotive, you know that they judge these things on a 30 days by 30 days basis. How many cars do we sell this month? The funny thing about all of that is that obviously here, the advertising that you did more than 90 days ago is actually what's going to impact the cars you sell this month. Having this type of data to be able to go to the people, or whether you're inside that automotive organization or you're an agency, what have you, and say, listen, you can blame us all you want, but your customer says this. This is the hard truth. These are the hard facts. It's pretty powerful. Because honestly, if they don't adopt this, they're just going to lose. They either got to get on board with the consumer or they're going to lose, because somebody else is going to be there. B2B, obviously longer timelines here as well. More than 30 days, 91%, more than 60, 84%, almost 70% more than 90 days. We expect that from a B2B. Obviously a lot more stakeholders, a lot more complex of a decision being made here. We understand that, but this hard data is really powerful here as well. So again, more than just reach and frequency, it does take time. Timeline is significantly impacted by market saturation, duration of purchase, so on and so forth. Market saturation meaning if we're starting a brand new campaign for an organization within a market that they have very little impact in thus far, obviously it's going to take more time to make that traction. Best practices are consistency equals maximize impact. This is an area where with this type of technology, display, video, OTT, we do not recommend too much in the realm of flighting campaigns, because how we're targeting these people is based upon their behavior. If their behavior is telling us that they're ready and they're in market, then we want to stay in front of them, period. Especially if we're able to engage on a cost per engagement basis, right? Because there's no cost to us unless they actually engage with the ad. So that's going to give us a lot of latitude in order to capitalize on that opportunity, okay? And as I mentioned, your customers will engage on their terms, not yours. As I said, if you don't have the patience to stay in front of them and do what it takes, somebody else will. Okay, so let's talk about a couple other strategies and tactics here. Be sure to have the right tool for the job. In this space, we see so many new things that are coming out all the time, so many different cool pieces of technology. The stuff that we can do is amazing. It's ridiculous. But oftentimes, one of the things that we see where people really go wrong is by using the wrong tool for the job. So I'm going to give you an example. Geofencing, okay? There is nothing wrong with geofencing when properly applied. In fact, some of you may have seen an ad for Genius Monkey while you've been here. I mean, we use it ourselves, but it's part of a greater strategy. Where we have a problem with that is that, and again, we use a lot of automotive examples here because most everybody in this room has bought a car at one point or another. If we use that automotive example, we know that the average auto purchaser only visits 1.3 dealerships. Meaning by the time that they got there, the job of the staff at that point, in this day and age when they've done their research online and everything else, the job of the staff at that point is not to screw it up, right? Because they're going to leave if they screw it up. Now, if knowing all of this, for us to use our marketing dollars to do a geofence around our competitor across town, and knowing that they're going to be sitting in the F&I department with this ad on the phone that says, hey, I think I might be able to save $500 going across town. They're not going to let them leave. That's not going to happen. They're going to save them that extra $500 to keep the business, right? So the only thing that we can hope to gain from a situation like that is eroding at the margins of our competitors. It doesn't put any money in our pockets. So these are the type of things, like we say, think through the eyes of the consumer and what that process looks like, because that will lead you to the right path, right? And of course, engage other experts in thinking through that process as well. So let's talk about kind of that strategy a little further unfolded. We had a little bit of a case study here, an auto group that came to us and said, we know that we're way behind in getting into the digital age, and we want to address that and address it directly in a big way. And so what we're going to do is we're going to cut off a lot of the areas where we know where we're not getting the performance that we want, and we're going to reduce in other areas where we feel like we may be a little bit heavily weighted. And so we love this idea. We don't get this opportunity very much, where we come in with the same budget, but a decent enough budget to be able to execute. And so at the starting point here, they had an average of about 180 leads per month. Over time, over the course of 6 months, they saw those leads jump to 280 leads per month, which is a 36% decrease in CPA over that first 6 months. Again, because we're keeping the budget the same here, okay? Interestingly, they were very wise in all this, and they actually stayed consistent. So over the course of 2 years, again, same budget, they were able to see those leads increase to 550 leads per month, which is a 67% decrease in CPA over the course of those 2 years. Now, listen, this is really great data, obviously had a great impact. However, what we saw that was most interesting in all of this was the way that all of these things work together. Because in the areas that they had cut back, cases like AutoTrader, Cars.com, and some of the like, they didn't actually see a reduction in the leads that were coming through those sources. They actually saw a significant increase. The reason for this is because they were able to stay in front of their audience any and everywhere that they may be, making their brand more relevant and allowing their consumer to feel more comfortable with that brand, right? So this is a really good example of how all of these things work together, that rising tide lifting all of those boats, and moving from a siloed one-man band, if you will, to a symphony. So creative. Give you some ideas around some of this. We'll run through a little bit of a case study here, but stay consistent, but keep it fresh, okay? Be consistent with your branding, be consistent with your messaging, but keep it fresh. Test new things frequently. Continue to look for something better. And a little note from our design department, if all else fails, he says, blame your designer's color and font choices. You have to know Josh's sense of humor with this. He's a great guy. All right, so let's look at a case study here. So we have 2 ads, all right? Same product. Go ahead and raise your hand if you feel that the ad on the left will have performed better. Okay, see a few hands. Raise your hand if you feel that the ad on the right will have performed better. Okay, a few more. All right. Let's see here. Well, we'll ask a question after. So I will tell you, you were right if you said the ad on the right. 22% more conversions from that ad. If you raised your hand saying that the ad on the right performed better, raise it again for me real quick. Okay. Sir, tell me a little bit about why you think the ad on the right performed better. Okay, more professional. Other ideas? Shout them out if you want. It's more poignant. Less copy. Okay. Color and font choices, he says. All right. So what we have here, and so those are all good examples. A couple of the areas, at least from our perspective, we feel, I think, and probably all of those are true, but we have less copy. This is a key piece. The less copy we have, the better. We always talk about like the 6-foot rule. Stand back from your monitor 6 feet and squint. If you can still get an idea of what's going on, then you might be on the right track. If you can't, then nobody's going to pay attention. So there's less copy, which really helps with that test. A couple other things. We see online being called out a little bit more directly, which kind of connotates that it's going to be a little bit easier to engage in the program. So that certainly helps quite a bit there as well. So I think, and again, a little bit more direct to the point. I think somebody said that here as well. So, but look, here's the deal. This is a test that we ran a while ago. I think we've actually moved on from this and have tested quite a few other things since. And that's all part of the point of test, test, and test again, right? And these things change. Colors, fonts, things like that, they're seasonal. I mean, it's like design in your home or your wardrobe, right? What is appealing to the eye is always changing. So it's important to continue to be testing. So John Wanamaker was a department store magnate famously said, half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half. The sad thing is this is a problem that we still face today, right? However, it doesn't have to be. Now, are we ever going to know 100% about what's working and what's not? No. But we can do a lot better than 50%. And this is really where attribution comes in, right? It's the ability for us to be able to assign some value to the various different efforts that we have in terms of what's working and what's not. So let's go through some of those. Oop, I went too far. And now I locked up. There we go. All right. So lots of different ways that we can measure with attribution models. So whether it be a last interaction attribution, first interaction, a linear decay, lots of different ways, or time decay, I should say, or linear attribution, position-based, lots of different ways that we can measure what's working and what's not with different positioning here. Let me give you a little bit of a rundown of why the most prominently used method of last interaction attribution can be a bit faulty. This is tell you a little story about my good friend Cam Newton. We're pretty tight. We were actually, one of my associates and I were in Atlanta not too long ago having dinner and with Cam and his family. Great guy. And by having dinner with Cam and his family in Atlanta, what I mean by that is that we were having dinner, and he was having dinner, and then he got up. I only assumed to go to the bathroom with his son, really cute kid, and he walks by, and I'm like, "Hey, what's up?" And he kept walking, but I really felt there was a connection there, like we're pretty tight. But anyways, so let's talk about last interaction attribution. In the case of Cam Newton, if we look at last interaction for his business, 488 yards, 4 touchdowns for 2018, okay? Not particularly impressive. If we look at a first interaction attribution, almost 3,400 yards and 24 touchdowns, okay? Very, very different story. Now, maybe, depending upon your perspective, $21 million a year makes sense. I'm not writing the check, really don't care. He's a nice guy, I mean, because we're close and all. And so I guess maybe he does deserve it. My point to all of this is that if we measured what we do as marketers in this same fashion, right, he wouldn't hardly get anything, nor would anybody else that is on the field that's blocking or whatever else, right? So we need to make sure that we understand there's an entire organization, there's an entire, hopefully, synchronous effort moving towards the same goal, everybody contributing. And that's really, when we start looking at attribution in a more proper format, what we can actually gain from it. So let's look at Google Analytics and some of the ways that people get lost, given that Google Analytics is highly skewed towards a last interaction attribution, which totally makes sense. I mean, the foundations of Google Analytics is specific to SEO and paid search, which is all going to be last interaction attribution, right? So no fault of it, but we have to make sure that we dig a little bit deeper so we understand what's going on. In this particular campaign, this was a display campaign that was run, looking at it period over period, we see a 63% increase in sessions, which is very encouraging. We see a 91% increase in users, but holy crap, 75% increase in bounce rate, and everybody starts panicking, okay? Well, a couple things from all this. Number one, a bounce actually is defined as somebody going to the site and then not going deeper into the site, right? They have to click further. Now, they could be there for 30 minutes scrolling through a really great landing page or home page that has all the information because you're doing a fantastic job on that website and giving them everything they need easily, but that would be considered a bounce, okay? So let's look a little bit deeper of what that looks like. So average session duration, 39 seconds in this campaign, 89% bounce rate specific to that traffic, right? But if we remove bounce sessions and we look at non-bounce, we have almost 6 minutes as the average session duration, which is significantly different, okay? So those that actually do dive deeper. Now, there is some other technology that we've recently developed, I don't have it here to show you at the moment, but where we can actually track the view-through traffic back to the site so you can actually see what that looks like. Because that is more along the lines of what you would expect from somebody who sees one of the ads. only a 0.5% click-through rate is standard, right, for a display campaign. That's considered a good click-through rate, okay? But where we see them coming back is that lift in traffic, like we saw coming to the site. They're obviously coming back, right? Because expecting them to do anything else would be like us expecting somebody to pull over to the side of the road when they see a billboard that's relevant to them, stop and call the number on the billboard. Raise your hand if you've done that lately, right? We don't do that. This is the same thing. This is a digital billboard, right? It happens to be pertinent to what's going on. We log it hopefully in their subconscious and they think of us when they're ready to act, okay? So we need to be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I promise you that we roll through some of the other more sophisticated types of attribution as well. Some of that data that we pulled, this is kind of where we pulled it from. I'll try to be brief here. We went out to try to actually partner with some companies to do attribution. We didn't want to build it ourselves. The problem that we had with that, though, is that we really didn't see that it was much better than what we had, what was in Google Analytics. It was better, but the problem is they were modeling based upon roughly 5 to 7% of the data, which just did not satisfy our needs, okay? We wanted far better information. So what our team developed was the ability to be able to have virtually a line-by-line record of every conversion that took place and how those conversions were touched along the way with roughly a 95 to 99% complete data. So far better. It also allows us to be able to observe and track interactions like this. So this is a specific IP address, and we're recording essentially all interactions from the first time that they were served an ad on the 14th of April. We can watch them through that process so that we can see all the times that we've served them ads. Over the course of 12 days to begin with, we served them over 60 ads. Every line here is a record of one of the ads that was served. We continue to stay in front of them, show them a couple of video ads as well, and then we see that they actually come to the site on the 16th of May and start browsing inventory on the site. Now we start to see more interaction types that we're tracking here in these records that are actually types of engagement they're taking on the site. So not only are we tracking what ads we've shown them, but we're also tracking what they're doing after seeing those ads, okay? We can see a lot more activity that day as they're browsing through the site. Every one of those, again, a record of that activity until they actually come through at 5:03 p.m. and submit a form fill. This is the type of data that really allows us to be very, very smart with our truly actionable intelligence here. So a couple of key takeaways from all of this. First, 60 plus impressions is what it took in order for the consumer to feel comfortable doing business, right? Plus a few video ads. By the way, we see that those two things complement each other really, really well. Highly recommend starting first with display, then adding video, and then if you still have the budget for it, you can talk OTT, CTV, okay? And we can talk a little bit more about that if you like as well. That attribution tracking leads to better data, which leads to better performance. And in this particular case, there was actually no click, mind you. No click whatsoever, so there was no charge for that conversion. Now, obviously, we calculate some ROAS based upon all of that to see what the actual return was, but in that particular case, there was no charge. And how many impressions does it take? If you remember this guy, as many impressions as it takes. Let's see here. Oh, all right. So with that data, some of the other things that we can pull from all of that as I look to wrap up, we can actually see of all the conversions that were being driven by our platform, we can see what percentage of the conversions that took place were touched by a display ad, what percentage of those conversions were touched by a video ad, by an email campaign. We can see all of that. We can actually integrate even with other areas that we're not actually driving. We can also see exactly how many of each type of conversion. So those are all defined prior to the campaign. What is the action that we want people to take? And then let's track how many of each of those are being done. Of course, then our system is optimizing towards the conversions that are most important to us as we move through. And we can also see what type of interaction do we have. So on the top right here, we're talking about supporting interactions. So are these people who have been to the site before and we're helping to bring them back? Or are these people who are coming to the site for the first time, never before been to the site? Interestingly, what we see in almost every case, is greater than 50%, oftentimes far greater than 50% of the conversions that are being driven are by people who have never before been to the site. So as we look to wrap things up, we talk about using the right tool for the job, understanding how all of these things work together. A wise man once said, everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid, right? And try to find the right partner to do these things, understanding what they're going to be able to deliver and what they're not. In conclusion, and a couple of key takeaways, reach and frequency, avoid the flat line, don't spread yourselves too thin. In terms of creative, test, and test again. Let the conversions guide you. Use the right tool for the job, as we said, understanding strengths and measuring accordingly. Find a holistic view using the most sophisticated data that you can to do so, understanding how all these things work together. Conversions are king. Measure the metrics that actually matter. It's really easy to miss the forest through the trees. So with that, it looks like I am out of time. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.